Hi, I'm Sarah Small, and I want to welcome you to the Tiny Printers YouTube channel. We are a new YouTube channel, though I have been around on TikTok for a while, so you may know me from there. But I have decided to create this YouTube channel to dedicate to tiny FDM 3D printers and all the wonderful tiny things and large things that they can create. Today, I decided to go over what exactly is a tiny printer in my estimation. So for that, we're going to start back in the fall of 2021, or rather the summer of 2021, when I went down a YouTube rabbit hole about 3D printing. I had been aware of 3D printing before that, but I really got obsessed with the idea of wanting a 3D printer in summer and fall of 2021. And as Christmas came and I decided I was going to get one and I was going to print some Christmas presents for some of the people in my life, I settled on the Neptune 2, which was an Ender 3 clone. If you're not aware, the Creality Ender 3 was from about 2018 until fairly recently, 2023, late 2022, early 2023. It was the most widely sold and used 3D printer. It is really what brought 3D printing out of the really expensive niche zone into a more mainstream hobby. It made it really accessible to a lot of people because the Ender 3 was a printer that you could buy fairly cheap, by which I mean under $500. When I bought my I didn't have the Ender 3 at first. I had, as I said, the Neptune 2. But when I bought it, it was right around $250. And that, again, was 2021. So it was toward the end of the Ender 3's heyday. But the Ender 3 and the many cloned 3D printers it spawned were really the standard for 3D printing for a very long time. And so when I talk about tiny printers, I am comparing them to the Ender 3 in bed size and in print volume. So one moment here. This is an Ender 3 print bed. The exact size of the bed is slightly larger, but the print volume is 220 millimeters by 220 millimeters in the X and the Y, with 220 millimeters in the Z, in the height. So it could print approximately a square of 220 millimeters a cube. So that was, at the time I started 3D printing, pretty much the standard build volume for most 3D printers. There were some that were slightly larger. The Creality CR10 series tended to be bigger, but this was what most people had, was one version or another of a printer this size. So when I speak of tiny printers, I'm talking about any printers with a build volume smaller than this. So we have our Ender 3. The printers that I have and their various build volumes, I don't have all their build prints right here because some of them are currently printing, but I have a Sculptor 2, which has a round build plate. It's actually a Sculptor 2 Pro. It's got a round build plate that is 200 millimeters diameter in its build volume, so smaller. I have an Ender 2 Pro, which is 165 by 165 in its build volume. I do have one slightly bigger than this. I have the Bamboo A1 Mini, which is 180 by 180 in its build volume. So around that size. I have a couple that are 150 by 150 by 150, which gives you about here. Then I have some that are around about 100 millimeters build volume. This one's 120 diameter, but that's a little misleading because, again, it's the diameter can be a little hard to print across. It doesn't have the corners. These two are both 100. This one goes 120 in the long ways. This one's 100 cubed. So they're roughly the same size. I do have one smaller than this. My newest printer, the Cadoodle Mini Box A1, is actually 90 millimeters cubed, so it is smaller. And so that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking tiny printers. It's anything smaller than our Ender 3. Did I mention the build plates are magnetic? So I have, what do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 tiny printers at the moment. And in various videos in the future, I'll go over each of them and I'll talk about the printers and what I print on them, why I got them, what I like about them individually, and what I don't like about each individual one, because they do all have their pros and cons. What I will say today about tiny printers in general, they are not for somebody wanting to have a print farm. For print farm, you're going to want a bigger printer that can do either larger sized things or multiple prints on one build plate. Because if you're print farming, which is just another way to say you're selling your prints, you generally are looking at multiples, at lots of things, building up your inventory so that you can sell it either online or in person at markets. These size build plates, you're not going to be quickly building inventory. On most of them, you're not going to be quickly printing, as many of these tinier printers, not all of them, but many of them tend to be older printers that are slower. I do have a couple of very fast printers. The Bamboo A1 Mini can do 600 millimeters a second, as well as the Cadoodle Mini Box A1, very confusing, those two names, can also do 600 millimeters a second, though neither one do the prints look good at that speed. But even at the good speeds of 300 millimeters a second, they are both significantly faster than most of my other printers that do around 40 to 50 millimeters a second. So, and that's true for most of the tiny printers. There are some faster ones, including Voron's, the new Sovol SV0, or the Sovol 0, which is basically a Voron 0 clone. Those are both very fast printers. So there are faster ones out there, but a lot of times the tiny printers are going to be slightly older technology that is slightly slower. And again, the small build plate means that they're not really suitable for print farming, for selling. If you're building up prints to sell, they're not going to be your best bet. They can be something to get you started out with if they're all you have access to, but you will fairly quickly want to upgrade to something with a bigger build plate and a faster speed that will make you more money. So what are tiny printers good for? For me, which is the only person I can really answer that question for, I became fascinated with tiny printers partly because of their size. If you have a big printer, it takes up a big space, and you can only have so many of them in most people's houses. A lot of times when people are running print farms, they start filling up their garages, filling up a spare bedroom, buying a studio space or a warehouse space and filling that up. I don't have that kind of space. I have a fairly nice basement that I live and work out of, but I don't have the space or the inclination to have a print farm of identical printers. The tiny printers, I can have multiples in a small space. There's 5 behind me, and they fit behind me, 5 of them. If this had, say, Ender 3 size printers, I could maybe get 3 back there. I can get 5 of the tiny printers, and they're also all different. No 2 of my tiny printers are the same, and I like it that way. I get to explore all the different variations of FDM fused deposition manufacturing, or filament 3D printing, and really explore the hobby without being locked in to one type of printer. And I like that. I like working on the printers. Not everybody does. Some people want something that's going to print and print reliably and that they're not going to have to do much with. And printers are getting closer to that. But that is not what I am in it for. And hopefully if you're watching this channel, that maybe isn't what you're in it for either. I like to explore all the options that FDM 3D printing has. And soon maybe even resin 3D printing, but for now we're sticking with FDM. So you may be wondering, okay, well, it's a teeny tiny build plate. What can you possibly print on a teeny tiny build plate? Well, for one thing, a cute plant. Everything on this plant would fit on this build plate. This plant was done in parts, and that is one way to print on a tiny build plate. And all of it fits on this build plate, which I think is very cool. If you're curious, this is a model by Blob Labs. I will link their Patreon down below. I recently joined them, really liking them. But yeah, they have some really cute plants that are supposed to print smaller, but it amuses me to size things up on tiny printers because nobody ever expects it. Other things that you can print, well, this tablet stand that printed today on my A1 Mini. So that is another thing that you can print if you're looking for practical prints. And then there is, if I can get my box up here, all of this. Everything in this box printed on a tiny print. Not all at once, but there's a spool holder. There's a book box that printed all in one piece. There's this book box, which is a monster that printed in 2 pieces. There's hamburger box. I like things that are boxes. Makes me feel like I'm printing things that are useful even when I'm not. We have our sarcophagus with mummy. We have a gnome. Plate stand. Ring. Another box. Cookie box. Ice cream box. Tiny skeletons. You gotta love the tiny skeletons. Smaller cookie box. Tiny sword. You can do a bigger sword on a tiny printer because they generally print all folded up, which makes them great. We have clickers. These are all the rage at the moment. We love our clickers. We have a unicorn. We have an awesome pancake octopus. We have a spool adapter. Dice Dragon Guardian. And just all sorts of things. Dice tower. Did I mention you can print a dice tower? Because you can. Dragons. If you're loving dragons, you can print dragons on the build plate of a tiny printer. All sorts of different fidget toys. And there's just a ton of things you can print on a tiny printer because they are, in fact, more versatile than you think. Somewhere it may have fallen. I think I also had a phone stand, but I don't know where it went. Dumping everything out of the box may have been a mistake, but it seemed like a good idea when I planned it. So yeah, I love my tiny printers, and I want to share that love with you guys. I'm going to do videos about the printers I have, some videos about printers I want to have, and some videos about printers I would not have ever again, or at all, as well as videos talking about how do you print on a tiny printer? Where do you find models that fit on a tiny printer? Or if the model doesn't fit on a tiny printer, how do you scale it down? Can you scale every model down? So we'll be going into a lot of that, or I'll be going into a lot of that. Hopefully you'll be along for the ride. So yeah, this is the first video on the Tiny Printers YouTube channel. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you join us for the next videos. Talk to me in the comments. Tell me, do you have a tiny printer? Do you want a tiny printer? And keep scrolling. Thank you.